Why do we root for couples that would destroy us in real life? Why do toxic relationships look romantic on screen, but painful in reality? Today, we're breaking down why cinema makes dysfunction feel like destiny. If we really think about it, it's kind of strange. Many of the couples we love the most in movies, in real life, would be a complete disaster. And yet we root for them, we defend them, we idealize them. Why? Because cinema has this incredible ability to transform dysfunctional dynamics into something that feels like destiny, intensity, absolute passion. And it all starts with a very powerful mechanism: trauma bonding mistaken for deep love. Trauma bonding that looks like destiny. Trauma bonding is a connection built through repeated emotional intensity and instability. In simple terms, it's the bond that forms when two people cycle through pain and reconciliation, distance and fusion, breaking apart and coming back together. The problem is that on screen, this instability gets framed as depth. Take Harley Quinn and the Joker in Suicide Squad. Their relationship is clearly manipulative, obsessive, unbalanced. And yet it's presented with stylized cinematography, powerful music, iconic slow-motion scenes. What's the result of those choices? Toxicity becomes aesthetic. Or think about 365 Days, the Netflix phenomenon that sparked massive controversy precisely because of how it packages very dark themes. It's almost a textbook example of how cinema can use aesthetics to alter perception. Here's how that visual transformation works. We have control, isolation, coercive dynamics. But the visual language, luxury, eroticism, intense gazes, reframes everything as passion. A kidnapping set in breathtaking Sicilian villas, on private yachts, surrounded by high fashion, distracts the viewer. The subliminal message becomes, "It's not a prison if the sheets are silk." The constant use of sensual pop songs during tense scenes tells the audience what emotion they're supposed to feel, replacing fear with excitement. Massimo is filmed with warm lighting, slow motion, obsessive focus on his physique. That transforms abusive behavior into the cliché of the tormented alpha male who just can't control his desire. One of the most critical issues psychologists raised was the portrayal of Stockholm Syndrome. In reality, a victim bonding with their captor is a survival mechanism. In the film, it's framed as romantic choice. In a psychological thriller, we'd explore the trauma. Here, the narrative quickly shifts to her desire, validating the idea that coercion equals devotion. It's fascinating, and honestly unsettling, how color grading and editing can make something aspirational that, in real life, would end in a courtroom. The human brain is drawn to intensity, and cinema amplifies intensity. So we start confusing chaos with love, obsession with devotion, dependency with destiny. And the more unstable the relationship is, the more unique it feels. We confuse drama with depth. Cinema lives on conflict. Without conflict, there is no story. So what happens? Calm, healthy, communicative relationships look flat on screen. If conflict is the engine that moves the characters, the audience's desire is the fuel that finances the journey. Cinema often works like a dream machine, or a machine of forbidden desires. Conflict doesn't just resolve a moral dilemma. Sometimes it justifies the fantasy. An unstable relationship, unpredictable, full of fights and reconciliations, keeps us watching. Because cinema doesn't just tell stories about conflict, it uses conflict to negotiate with our morality. It allows us to enjoy scenarios we would condemn in real life. It's a kind of emotional free zone. Think about 50 Shades of Grey. Christian Grey is controlling, jealous, emotionally closed off. But the direction, the soundtrack, the elegant atmosphere transform those traits into mystery and allure. We're not watching a healthy relationship. We're watching a cinematic one. And the audience associates emotional tension with depth. But conflict does not equal emotional complexity. It just means something is keeping the narrative alive. Stability doesn't create suspense. Stability doesn't create cliffhangers. Stability doesn't generate debate. So cinema chooses drama. The fantasy of, I can fix them. Another incredibly powerful element is the savior fantasy. Many romantic stories push the idea that love can heal everything, that if you love someone enough, you can change them. Again, 50 Shades is a clear example. Anna believes, and the narrative supports this, that her love can transform Christian. But that's a dangerous fantasy. That's not partnership. That's a mission. And this dynamic appears everywhere. Twilight, After, Joker, even Ross and Rachel in Friends, where constant instability is interpreted as proof of deep feeling. The audience loves the idea of being the exception, of being the one person who succeeds where everyone else failed. But in reality, that kind of dynamic creates imbalance. Cinema presents it as romantic redemption. Why is watching this so satisfying? Now we get to the most interesting part. Watching toxic relationships in movies feels good because it's safe. We get to experience jealousy, obsession, conflict, breakups, reconciliations without facing real consequences. The movie ends. We remain intact. It's an emotional roller coaster. The adrenaline is real, but the danger isn't. A healthy relationship, on the other hand, is built on dialogue, balance, continuity. But balance is quiet, and quiet doesn't always work in cinema. That's why Titanic works. It's intense, brief, tragic. That's why Mr. and Mrs. Smith works. Conflict plus attraction plus danger. That's why destructive couples generate fandoms, because instability is entertaining. We can say this clearly. Toxic relationships are cinematic because they are unstable, and instability is narrative. But narrative is not reality. We don't romanticize these stories because we're naive. We romanticize them because cinema turns chaos into poetry. Soft lighting, intense music, close-ups, loaded dialogue, and suddenly, manipulation feels like passion. Maybe the real question isn't, why do we love toxic relationships? Maybe it's, what would happen if we removed the music, the lighting, the editing? If we saw those dynamics without the cinematic filter, would we still call it love? And this is where cinema becomes truly interesting. Not because it teaches us what is healthy, but because it shows us what is emotionally powerful. The difference lies in knowing how to distinguish the two. So maybe we don't romanticize toxic love because we're naive. Maybe we do it because cinema makes chaos look poetic. And poetry is easier to fall in love with than reality. If you enjoy this kind of psychological deep dive into cinema, make sure you subscribe to Andy on Set. See you in the next episode.